The sun was setting over Ouagadougou, dyeing the sky a blood-orange hue. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young interim president of Burkina Faso, strode with determined steps through the corridors of the presidential palace. His face, usually impassive, betrayed an unusual tension this evening. His eyes, slightly narrowed, scanned every corner, every shadow. "Mr. President, they're waiting for you," his aide-de-camp announced, opening the door to the crisis room. Around the oval table sat his most loyal generals, those who had supported him when he seized power in September 2022. The atmosphere was heavy, electric. No one spoke. Traoré took his seat at the far end of the table and drew a deep breath. "Gentlemen, I have received information that can no longer be ignored," he declared firmly, placing a red file on the table. "A coup is being prepared against our government." A murmur ran through the assembly. Colonel Hayes, head of military intelligence, slid several photographs across the table. "These images were taken 3 days ago, Mr. President. Secret meetings, arms transfers, coded communications. Some high-ranking officers were involved." Silence fell again as Traoré examined the documents one by one. His expression hardened when he discovered the names of the conspirators. "I recognize several of these men," he muttered. "Officers I promoted myself." He suddenly straightened, slapping the table flat-handed. "We act tonight. Mount a coordinated operation. I want all these men arrested before dawn. But understand me well," he added, sweeping the assembly with his gaze. "No unnecessary violence. The people of Burkina Faso need justice, not vengeance." Colonel Hayes nodded. "And for the civilians involved, sir?" "The same. No one is above the law. No one." The following hours were a whirlwind of activity. Military helicopters discreetly overflew the capital while elite units took up positions around the targeted residences. At precisely midnight, the operation was launched simultaneously across the country. Dawn was barely breaking when Traoré received the first reports. The operation had been a resounding success. 23 officers and 11 civilians had been arrested without a single shot fired. Arms caches were discovered, compromising documents seized. A few hours later, crowds began to gather spontaneously in the streets of Ouagadougou. News had spread like wildfire. Songs rose up. "Traoré, defender of the people. IBT, our protector." That same evening, the president addressed the nation in a televised speech. "People of Burkina Faso, we have foiled a plot to destabilize our country. I promise you that all those responsible will be tried in accordance with our laws. No traitor will go unpunished." After his speech, Traoré returned to his office. He was exhausted yet satisfied. Colonel Hayes awaited him with a new report. "Mr. President, we questioned the main suspects. One of them said something strange. What was it?" General Donovan stated, "You haven't yet discovered who is truly pulling the strings." Then he refused to say more. A shiver ran down Traoré's spine. He had the unpleasant sensation that something still eluded him. "Continue the interrogations. I want to know who else is involved." Hayes hesitated. "There is something else, sir. We found this document in General Donovan's residence." Traoré grabbed the paper. It was a list of names. His eyes ran quickly down the document until they abruptly stopped on one. His blood froze in his veins. The paper slipped from his fingers and drifted slowly to the floor. Encircled in red ink, a name: Solomon Carter, his best childhood friend. Ibrahim Traoré stared at the document as if hoping that, by looking at it long enough, the letters would rearrange to form another name. Solomon Carter. Those two words echoed in his mind like a distant sound, bringing with them an avalanche of memories. "Mr. President, do you know this person?" asked the colonel, noticing the sudden change in Traoré's demeanor. Traoré pulled himself together, masking his distress. "Continue the interrogations, Colonel. I need to think." Alone in his office, he approached the window. In the distance, the lights of Ouagadougou twinkled in the night. How could Solomon be involved? His friend, his brother. Images flooded his mind. 2 boys running barefoot through the dusty streets of Hillcrest, their laughter echoing against the ochre walls of the houses. The makeshift ball they kicked until dusk forced them home. Solomon, taller and stronger, standing guard over frail Ibrahim against bullies outside school. "No one will touch my brother," Solomon had declared that day, shielding Ibrahim like a human shield. The years had passed, but their friendship remained unshakable. At 18, sitting on the hill overlooking their hometown, they had made a pledge. "One day, we will change this country," Ibrahim had said, eyes shining with ambition. "Together," Solomon had added, squeezing his hand, "for justice and for the people." Then their paths diverged. Ibrahim went to university, then the army. Solomon studied abroad before returning to public administration. They saw each other less often, but each reunion felt as if they had never been apart. After seizing power, Traoré had naturally offered his friend a position in his government. But Solomon declined, claiming he wanted to stay close to the people. "I'll be more useful in the field than locked in a ministry," he had explained. Now Traoré shook his head in disbelief. Was this a mistake? Manipulation to destabilize him? He called his security chief. "I want discreet surveillance on Solomon Carter. No arrest, no interrogation, just information. And no one else is to know." The following days were difficult. While the country celebrated the dismantling of the plot, Traoré bore alone the weight of this terrible suspicion. Reports arrived regularly on his desk. Solomon apparently led a normal life, working at the Ministry of Development, visiting his mother on Sundays, playing football with neighborhood children. Then, one morning, an agent brought him a USB stick. "Mr. President, we intercepted this. It's surveillance footage from a warehouse in the industrial zone, dated 3 days before our operation against the plotters." The video showed Solomon entering an abandoned building discreetly. He emerged 2 hours later looking worried, glancing nervously around. "The warehouse belongs to a shell company linked to General Donovan," the agent specified. Traoré's heart tightened. Another report arrived the next day, an audio recording captured during a secret meeting. Solomon's voice was perfectly recognizable. "The system is rotten from the inside," he said. "We must change everything, from the inside out. The moment is close." Traoré listened to the tape again and again, looking for in his friend's tone an explanation other than betrayal. "It could be faked," he murmured to himself, eyes moist. He would never do that. But the evidence accumulated. Other meetings, other recordings, suspicious money transfers, contacts with those now behind bars for attempting a coup d'etat. 1 week after the surveillance began, Traoré made his decision. He had to know. He had to hear the truth from Solomon's own lips, not as president, but as a friend. "Prepare an unmarked car," he ordered his aide-de-camp. "I will go alone to Hillcrest tomorrow morning." "But Mr. President, that's against every security protocol." "I'm not asking your opinion, Captain. No one else must know." The captain hesitated. "At least allow a security team to follow at a distance." Traoré relented reluctantly. "Very well, but they intervene only on my explicit order." At dawn the next day, a modest Peugeot quietly left the presidential palace. At the wheel, dressed in a simple boubou, Ibrahim Traoré drove toward his past, and perhaps toward the most painful confrontation of his life. The road between Ouagadougou and Hillcrest rolled beneath the Peugeot's wheels. Traoré drove in silence, mind tortured by unanswered questions. The arid savanna landscape contrasted with the storm raging in his heart. After 5 hours, he reached the outskirts of Hillcrest. The nation's second-largest city had hardly changed since his childhood. The same dusty streets, colorful markets, and the great mosque whose minaret rose proudly skyward. He skirted downtown, taking back roads he knew by heart. His vehicle finally turned down a dirt path leading to an isolated village 10 kilometers away. Here, Solomon's family had owned a house for generations, a place he often retreated to as a teenager to escape city bustle. Traoré parked under a century-old baobab and got out, scanning the surroundings. No sign of life except a few goats lazily grazing sparse grass. The security team following him took discreet positions around the perimeter, invisible yet present. The house was unchanged. Simple earthen walls, thatched roof, a shaded veranda. Traoré approached slowly, heart pounding. He knew Solomon was inside. His agents had confirmed it. He stopped before the closed door, hesitated a moment, then knocked 3 brisk times. No answer. He gently pushed. The door opened without resistance. Inside was darkness, a welcome refuge from the afternoon heat. His eyes gradually adjusted. In the center of the main room, kneeling on a prayer rug, was Solomon Carter. He finished his prayer, seeming to ignore his visitor's presence. Traoré waited silently, observing this man he'd known since childhood, searching in his silhouette for signs of the betrayal he feared. Solomon finally rose and turned to him. Their eyes met. Time seemed to stop. "I knew you would come," Solomon said calmly, sooner or later. Traoré remained motionless, studying his childhood friend's face. He saw the same familiar features, but also something new, something hard he did not recognize. "Why?" he asked simply, voice trembling despite efforts to remain impassive. Solomon held his gaze. "Because you forgot me, Ibrahim. You forgot all of us. What are you talking about? Our dreams. Our promises. Solomon gestured around the room. Look around. This village hasn't changed since our childhood. No running water, no stable electricity, no future for the youth. What have you done for them since you took power? Traoré absorbed the blow. I took power barely 2 years ago in a country on the brink of chaos, besieged by terrorists, abandoned by international partners. Excuses, Solomon cut in. You've become like the others, Ibrahim, a palace man, cut off from reality. So that's why you allied with traitors who wanted to overthrow the legitimate government? A heavy silence settled. Solomon approached the window, looking outside. I joined them because I believed you had drifted away from what we defended. Justice, equality, a Burkina Faso for everyone, not just the Ouagadougou elite. You could have spoken to me, Traoré said, voice almost pleading. We grew up together. We fought together. You were my brother, Solomon. Would you have listened? Solomon turned back. Or would you have sent one of your generals, like you did when the elders from our village tried to meet you? Traoré lowered his eyes. It was true. In the whirlwind of power, he had delegated, prioritized, sometimes forgotten. Are you still that boy who dreamed of changing the world? Solomon asked. Or have you become just another man in uniform on a fleeting throne? Tears filled Traoré's eyes. Tears not of weakness, but of rage, pain, disillusion. I've made mistakes, he admitted. But I have always acted for the country's good. Never would I conspire against a friend. Sometimes friendship demands hard truths, Solomon replied. And sometimes betrayal is still betrayal, no matter the justification, Traoré countered, his voice regaining firmness. The two men looked at each other for a long time, each searching the other's eyes for a trace of their past friendship. What will we do now? Solomon finally asked. Traoré discreetly took out his phone and sent a message. I do what duty requires, even if it breaks my heart. Footsteps sounded outside. The door burst open and 4 soldiers in combat gear entered, weapons in hand. Solomon Carter, you are under arrest for high treason and complicity in an attempted coup d'etat, announced the officer commanding the unit. Solomon did not resist. He extended his wrists for the cuffs, never taking his eyes off Traoré's face. Silent tears now streamed down his cheeks. I'm sorry, Ibrahim, he murmured as they led him away. For everything. Left alone in the empty house, Traoré collapsed onto a chair, face buried in his hands. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, bathing the savannah in golden light that no longer warmed his heart. The arrest of Solomon Carter had the effect of a bomb throughout Burkina Faso. National and international media seized on the affair, running headlines about the traitor friend or brotherly betrayal. Photos of Solomon and Traoré together in their youth circulated on social networks, accompanied by comments sometimes sympathetic, sometimes accusatory. For many Burkinabés, Solomon was a respected figure, an honest man who had worked tirelessly for rural communities. His involvement in the plot seemed inconceivable. How can one betray his own brother? Some asked. Perhaps he had his reasons, murmured others more critical of the regime. At the presidential palace, an unusual silence reigned. Ibrahim Traoré had withdrawn to his private apartments, canceling all appointments. Only his closest advisors were allowed to see him, and then only for urgent state matters. On the 3rd day after the arrest, the justice minister knocked on his door. Come in, answered a tired voice. The minister found Traoré seated before a window, looking out over the city below. Untreated files piled on his desk. Mr. President, we must discuss the trial of the plotters. Traoré did not answer immediately. His gaze was fixed on an old photograph he held in his hands. 2 young men in military uniform, arms around each other, smiling at the camera. It must be a fair trial, he said at last. Transparent, open to international observers. The minister nodded, ill at ease. And about Carter. Some suggest special treatment because of your shared history. Traoré abruptly set down the photo. The law is the same for everyone, even for him. After the minister left, Traoré kept silent vigil by the window. On his desk, an envelope caught his eye. It had arrived that very morning. The shaky handwriting on the yellowed envelope belonged to an elderly person. He opened it carefully. My dear Ibrahim, I write to you as one who watched you both grow up, you and my grandson. I will not defend what he has done. Betrayal remains betrayal, even if motivated by ideals. But know that he loved you like a brother until the end. Perhaps it was that very love, deformed by disappointment, that led him down this dark path. May Allah guide your decisions and ease your heart. Grandma Miriam. Traoré reread the letter several times, hands trembling. He remembered Grandma Miriam perfectly, the wise old woman who had so often welcomed them into her modest home, offering sweet tea and stories of their people's glorious history. A discreet knock interrupted his thoughts. It was his Foreign Affairs Minister. "Mr. President, the international press demands a statement. Your silence fuels rumors." He hesitated before adding, "Some say this affair has broken you." Traoré gave a bitter laugh. "Broken? No. Changed, certainly. You want us to draft a firm communique showing your determination against treason?" "No," Traoré interrupted. "I will address the nation myself. Tonight." That night, in a sober, emotional, televised speech, Ibrahim Traoré spoke directly to his people. "Citizens of Burkina Faso, I speak to you not only as your president, but as a man who has had to face the most painful of trials, the betrayal of a dear friend." He paused, visibly struggling to maintain composure. "Justice will take its course for all the accused without exception. But I want you to know the real pain did not come from the attempted coup. It came from losing a brother." Across the country, Burkinabés watched their young president with a mixture of respect and compassion. For the first time they saw beyond the uniform and the title. A vulnerable man, wounded yet still standing. "I promise never to forget why I accepted this responsibility. To serve every Burkinabé in every village and every neighborhood. If I have failed in this promise, I ask your forgiveness and pledge to do better." The next day, Traoré made a surprising decision. He formally banned any harassment or reprisals against Solomon's family. "Justice concerns the guilty, not their relatives," he declared firmly at a cabinet meeting. His security minister protested. "But sir, some family members might be accomplices." "Then investigate properly," Traoré replied curtly. "I will not tolerate persecution based on family ties." Weeks passed. Traoré gradually resumed his duties, but those who knew him well noticed a change. He was more thoughtful, more attentive, less quick to anger. Betrayal had transformed him. One evening, as he worked late, his aide brought him the day's newspapers. "The opposition says you've become weak," the aide remarked, pointing to a particularly virulent article. Traoré skimmed the text, then gave a sad smile. "They confuse strength with hardness," he said simply. "True strength is continuing to believe in humanity despite disappointment." He stood and walked to the window, observing the city lights. "Do you know what is truly difficult, Captain? Not arresting an enemy, arresting someone you love, knowing it's the only just thing to do." 6 months had passed since Solomon's arrest. The plotter's trial was underway, closely followed by the population and international observers. Ibrahim Traoré had kept his word. Justice proceeded transparently and fairly, without political interference. On a cool January morning, the president quietly left the palace in a simple jeep, accompanied only by 2 bodyguards. He wore civilian clothes, khaki pants and a white shirt, instead of his usual military uniform. The convoy headed toward Hillcrest but did not stop downtown. It continued to an outlying district where a dilapidated old building stood, the primary school Traoré and Solomon had attended as children. The building was nearly in ruins, crumbling walls, a tin roof riddled with holes, broken wooden desks piled in deserted classrooms. Traoré walked slowly through the corridors, sometimes touching the walls as if communing with his past. In a room at the back, he found what he sought. Old initials carved into a pillar. IBT plus SC equals Brothers for Life. He had scratched it there at 10 years old. He stood long, contemplating the childish letters testifying to a childhood promise. Then, determined, he returned to his jeep and gave instructions to his driver. A week later, a press conference was held on that very site. Before cameras and intrigued journalists, Traoré announced a new national program, Brothers of the Nation. "This program will train young leaders from the most disadvantaged neighborhoods and villages," he explained. "We will identify talent, give them the means to study and train, then have them return to serve their communities. True change comes from within, from young people who know the realities on the ground." The project would be financed by reducing state expenses and reallocating assets seized from corrupt officials and traffickers. The old school would be rehabilitated as the program's first training center. Work began immediately. Traoré personally involved himself, visiting regularly, talking with workers, listening to their suggestions. During those visits, he rediscovered a part of himself he had almost forgotten. The idealistic youth who truly believed he could change the world. At the inauguration 3 months later, a little girl approached timidly as he inspected new classrooms. "Mr. President," she asked in a small voice, "do you still believe in people after what your friend did?" An awkward silence fell. Adults exchanged embarrassed glances, fearing his reaction to so direct, so personal a question. Traoré knelt to meet the child's gaze. His face, usually stern before cameras, softened. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Grace, Mr. President," she said, eyes downcast. "Well, Grace, that is an excellent question." He took a deep breath before continuing, "And the answer is yes. It is precisely because I still believe in people that I keep fighting. Disappointment must never make us abandon hope." Captured by cameras, his response spread across social networks within hours. For many, it revealed an unknown facet of their young leader, his ability to transform personal hurt into collective strength. In the weeks that followed, Brothers of the Nation expanded to other regions. Young people from disadvantaged backgrounds received training, mentorship, and support to develop concrete projects in their community. One morning, as he worked in his office, Traoré received an envelope. It came from the central prison where Solomon awaited trial. He hesitated long before opening it. "Ibrahim, words are insufficient to express my regret. I believed I acted out of conviction, but I understand now that loyalty and honesty should have prevailed. I mistook your silence for indifference, your pragmatism for abandonment. Too late, I learned what true loyalty is. You have always been faithful to your word, even when it broke your heart. This is a lesson I will never forget, whatever my sentence. Forgive me, my brother, Solomon." Traoré read the letter without visible expression. He did not reply, but that night, he slipped it into the inner pocket of his uniform, close to his heart. Time passed. The coup plotter's trial concluded, and sentences were pronounced. Justice was served, without vengeance, but without weakness. Solomon was sentenced to 10 years in prison, a lighter sentence than that of the main organizers, but without special consent. 1 year after the coup, Traoré decided to unexpected a sober monument erected in the capital. Pillars of black justice and fraternity on the base was inscribed on, but strengthened at the huge crown. For the first time, no partisan action, just a people united in reflection. Traoré delivered a brief but powerful speech. "This monument is not here to celebrate a victory or mourn a defeat. It exists to remind us that our true enemies are neither foreign nations nor even the individuals who betray us. Our true enemies are the mistrust, injustice, and division that corrode our hearts." As the ceremony ended, a small boy approached timidly to offer flowers to the president. Traoré bent to receive them. "What's your name, my boy?" he asked with a smile. "My name is Solomon, Mr. President," the child replied. A shadow crossed Traoré's face. Then a melancholic yet sincere smile lit his face. He embraced the child with visible emotion. Later, as night fell over Ouagadougou,